Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Energy News Beat podcast. My name's Stu Turley, President of the Sandstone Group. Today is an outstanding day. I've got David Blackman, my co-host here with Energy Impacts, his podcast. How are you, David?
I am just lovely. I'm so happy to be here with you and Doomberg. It's just always a red letter day in my week when that happens.
I'll tell you what, Doomberg, I want to give you a shout out, almighty Doomberg. Thank you. And for those podcast listeners, our podcast listeners know our next guest, almighty Doomberg. How are you today, sir?
You know, Stu, David, good to see you. Always happy to chat. Doing great. Publication day is always a bit hectic as we wade through the comments and the emails. And but life is good.
All right. I'll tell you what, Doomberg, I want to give you a thank you. FeedSpot named Energy News Beat number 3 globally out of all of the top 70 best energy podcasts in the world. And I think it is because of my guests, not my hairline. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it has to be an error. I don't know who these other 2 podcasts are, but
yeah, somebody made a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, you're on the podium, but it's the wrong medal.
Oh, I don't care. I'm thrilled to be part of that day. But today, Doomberg, we really want to talk about the oil and gas markets as they are outlying out today. And I did not have on my bingo card an invasion in Venezuela. So with that, let's kind of get rolling and start on what are your thoughts on A, the glut, and B, Venezuela?
Yeah, sure. So your title is Where is the Oil Glut? I would say that the oil glut is largely here. We can talk about Venezuela and what that means. I'm sure we will. But, for years now, in the face of arguments that peak oil is here, peak cheap oil is real, Hubbard's peak and all that jazz, we've been saying that the equilibrium price of oil, crude oil, is $55 a barrel. We explain how we come at that price, which is, $10 per million BTU landed LNG is the price that everyone in the natural gas value chain needs in order to just barely earn their cost of capital. Then when you multiply, $10 per million BTU natural gas by 5.6 or 5.8, you end up in the mid 50s as an equilibrium price of crude oil. Brent trades in lockstep with 5.8 times Dutch TTF. And that's not a coincidence because both crude oil and natural gas are used to make electricity. People don't realize there's still 4 million barrels a day of crude oil being burned to make electricity worldwide. Mm-hmm. And here we are, when we first started putting this model out, oil was in the 70s and 80s, and now we're down to, I think, 57 WTI today, 60 Brent. So yeah, the glut is here. It's going to be a tough 2026, I think, for producers. The entire Venezuelan affair is, all things being equal, bullish for supply, bearish for price. A whole lot to be said about Venezuela. I'm sure we're putting out, just to give everyone a heads up, an early Doom Zoom tomorrow for our Pro Tier subscribers, and the first third of it will go to our newsletter subscribers as a preview, and we did a deep dive of the presentation of spoils of war, the oil and gas potential of Venezuela. To be fair, after the word war is a question mark in our presentation.
Good, yes. The administration will appreciate that.
And so, well, whether or not there's actually spoils there to be had is the question. I think Maduro would call it a war. So lots of sort of conspiratorial thinking as well. But we did a deep dive. What's there, what's possible, what will it cost, what are the challenges, what could we expect coming forward. But as to the title of this podcast, I mean, the global energy markets, the physical global energy markets are extraordinarily well supplied. As we're talking today, Newcastle coal, $107 a million BTU, that's doing nothing. Landed LNG in Europe is $963. Henry Hub natural gas is about 3/4 of a Big Mac. And an ounce of silver will buy you a barrel of oil and some change. And so, never mind even, inflation adjusted, there's just so much hydrocarbon floating around the world that it's tough slogging for producers.
It is, but then you also have the question of, yeah, we have a glut now, likely to have one at least for a year. But you still have to account for future supply and future drilling opportunities and future inventories, right?
Yep, you sure do. But we've got an enormous amount of natural gas and NGLs coming out of the ground. And look.
Oh yeah. I'm talking about oil.
Well, I mean, oil includes NGLs. Crude oil doesn't.
Sure.
But I think crude. But the thing I would say is China has been buying 1 million extra barrels a day all year,
right,
for most of 2025, and stuffing it into their strategic reserves.
How big is their reserve?
It's it's China. Hard to say. I've seen estimates of I think 1 billion barrels. Does that make sense?
Okay, so
what's that? The strategic petroleum reserve is 700 million barrels.
7 something 30.
It's got
or something like
400 and change in it, I think.
Yeah.
So if China stops buying at that pace, and look, we wrote a piece wondering whether they were planning for war, because it's not just crude oil that they're stockpiling. There's an enormous amount. I agree with you that we're getting to prices for crude oil that can make it difficult for the formation of investor capital. But as we've talked about before, in the US, of course, co-product economics has taken over. If natural gas were to spike on AI demand, say, you could see drillers drilling for gas and dumping the crude oil onto the market the way they're drilling for crude oil and dumping the gas onto the market now.
Right.
If that ever pivots, not that it looks like it's going to at $3 and change Henry Hub. There's just so much of it. We're putting together a presentation. We're going to a small private ag conference in January, and the presentation is energy and agriculture, a primer for the sophisticated farmer. And I've just talked about what shale has wrought, and it's just like the world is long oil and gas. The U.S. is an oil and gas gigapower. There's a tsunami of natural gas hitting the market, even at these prices, and they're not even drilling for it on purpose, except in Appalachia and Haynesville and a few places. But there's so much in the Permian that could just be tapped tomorrow. So
let me ask this, because if you look at the amount of AI data centers, and I believe that we are facing the potential of an AI data center bubble. If you take a look at the stock market and the overinvestment and the demand curve, take a look at ERCOT. ERCOT has 180 nameplate capacity of electricity devices that can make the electricity. We had 82 gigawatts of peak demand in 2025, but they have 230 gigawatts of additional AI data center requests in. So how much of that is real versus how much of it is not? And then take a look at how many natural gas turbines are out there. How is nat gas? I guess my question is going to be twofold. If the nat gas that comes online for data centers, is nat gas going to no longer be cyclical because of the amount of demand of potential data center and power generation coming online? Could that eviscerate the cyclical nature of the natural gas market?
Yeah, a couple of things I want to say there. First of all, it's a race between the materialization of that demand and the technological development and the ease with which incremental methane is pulled out of the ground. And because the oil and gas companies are technology powerhouses, as we have been saying, the rate at which it is becoming ever easier to find and bring to market natural gas on a scale that was once thought unthinkable is a very high rate. And so, the flow of demand versus the ability to get new supply to meet that demand is the race that everyone is trying to ballpark. However, we're publishing a piece this weekend, probably doing a deep dive on this new law in Ohio, which I think is the way the market is going to go, which is Ohio's passed this law. I think it's SB 15. I wrote it over the holidays, so it's a bit of a try to get ahead, during the holidays and give the give the team some time off. This law makes it incredibly easy to go behind the meter in Ohio, so that at least you're circumventing the transmission constraints and the impact on the grid, at least the direct. Yes, I know there is a difference between crude oil and condensate. Thank you very much. The back to the data centers. That's going to at least alleviate some of the sort of crowding out of residential and industrial customers on the grid that we're seeing across the nation. Something we predicted in a piece called Irreconcilable Differences over a year ago. Taking a little longer for it to manifest, but I think this law in Ohio is an important one. And I think we're going to see state after state follow Ohio's lead, which then just moves the bottleneck to turbines and natural gas molecules. But at least that's a little bit more of something that can be handled relative to forcing all of these data centers onto the grid.
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. Are data centers going to need smokestacks to vent the no O2? And I do not know an answer on that.
Facetious question.
Yeah, there's very little in the way of NOx that is generated when you burn natural gas compared to
almost none.
Other hydrocarbons. So this is California CARB counting a number of angels on the head of a pin at some point. I mean, you cook with the stuff in your house and you're not venting it as you use it. So I don't know.
But yeah, when you consider that. Now, when we sit back and take a look at Venezuela, you got to have a lot of fun with Venezuela. They only do 700 million barrels per day compared to their 3 million barrels per day, 700,000 barrels per day now. The estimates that is going to take to rebuild, you have the old Chevron executive is now trying to meet with investors to raise $2 billion in order to get those fields back online and really start producing again. I've been really nosing around on who's going to be the benefactors for who to invest in and take a look at this. I think the Venezuelan people are all happy that Maduro is gone. There's a lot of people happy about it, but can you tell us what your article potentially tomorrow is going to be about?
Yeah, it's not an article. It's a 40-minute presentation for our pro tier that we do once a month, our Doom Zooms. We rushed one out, of course, because of the news, and spent the weekend putting it together. So minor corrections to your numbers. At their peak, they kissed 4 million barrels a day, just slightly under 4 million barrels a day. And they're probably closer to 900,000 barrels a day today, with about 600,000 going to exports. Of that, 2/3 to China, 1/3 to the U.S. Round numbers, it's like everything. Hard numbers in these relatively obscure markets are hard to come by. So the real comp for us is Canada. Similar size resource, similar API grade, similar challenges, blending with lights and getting it to market and all that stuff. And Canada differs from Venezuela in several ways. It has far better institutions, far more consistent contract law, stronger track record of being relatively friendly to investors. It doesn't have the history of nationalizations that Venezuela has gone through, first in 1977 and then 2007, the latter being a little less investor friendly than the former. Canada today produces 6 million barrels a day of oil and 20 BCF per day of natural gas. And we think that's the comp that Venezuela should be at. The litany of challenges between here and there are formidable, especially at $57 WTI and $3 Henry Hub. But as we all know, in the oil and gas sector, long-term planning is not made on spot prices, and possession of the resource is 90% of the goal.
Right.
And they'll figure out a way to print a bunch of cash the next time there's a shortage, and that's sort of how they think. I saw that article on the former Chevron executive trying to raise $2 billion. felt like an opportunistic capital raise by an entrepreneur, if you ask me. And I think you need to add at least a couple of zeros to the end of that to make a meaningful dent into what's needed. Last thing I'll say, there's a huge challenge. The ugly history of Venezuela as it pertains to the energy markets is such that somewhere between 150 billion and 170 billion of claims against Venezuela exist in various forms. People that had their property, quote unquote, stolen from them in 2007, tens of billions of defaulted bonds by the Venezuelan state-owned oil company, Chinese debt that is being paid back with oil, Russian debt. Presumably, Trump is going to take the equity of these Russian and Chinese companies in Venezuela, and we'll see if there's any retribution. So when you add it all up, there's a long line of people that have their hand in the Venezuelan energy pie, and they have varying, the claims against Venezuela have varying degrees of weight or of justification. Again, when what Chavez did, what he did in 2007, the famous Citgo lawsuits are still rolling on today, and so. Same thing with Argentina. When we talked about Argentina, like these legacy decisions from, despots gone by, they tend to leave a legacy of lawsuits and so on. And last thing we'll say is, as we mentioned this in the Doom Zoom, which is one thing is clear after researching the history in preparation for that talk is the biggest winners, as always, are the lawyers.
How fun!
Inevitably, yes.
Do you think with his there's two questions here. The corruption runs deep in Venezuela. And if I was a Yoda, I'd be corruption deep it is. And when you take a look at, I don't know if that was Kermit the Frog or
that was
Yoda.
Kermit, yeah.
But so the corruption is President Trump silly for thinking that he can allow the people that were there in the way that Venezuela had everything bifurcated out into department heads and the number 2 person still there? Does he even have a chance?
It's an interesting experiment. Part of me says we're at the euphoria phase of various neocon operations where the shock and awe has been successful and we assume everything else is a rounding error, which has turned out not to be correct in Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq. Pick your favorite country that we've ruined.
Yeah.
But at the flip side, there aren't meaningful boots on the ground. It was a surgical extraction, and there's a lot of rumors that Maduro cut a deal for reasons that are totally unrelated to energy, which, again, not sure if you've read that, but might have something to do with certain elections that Trump is keenly passionate about, historical elections. And we'll see.
I've written at length about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not quite whispered about, but it's not conventional yet either. So we'll see. It's alive and well in the Twitterverse and at blackman.substack.com. And so the strategy is yes, that government is corrupt, but we'll make them corrupt for us. That seems to be, if I had to summarize the strategy. So look, I mean,
what a way to
phrase that. What the quote about Bautista was he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch.
Right. And look, I mean, almost everywhere in the world, the oil and gas industry is extraordinarily corrupt. I mean, these super majors are world class at dealing with such things. And
you have to be.
You have to be. And so it's an interesting kind of a power play. Like everybody gets to keep what they have. We'll take this guy. And instead of doing the bidding of China and Russia, you'll do the bidding of the US. Otherwise, the next, salve of missiles will be far more devastating. So that seems to be the play. Kind of makes sense. It certainly makes more sense than trying to occupy the country with 80,000 troops or some crazy number. Whether it works or not, we'll see. It is amazing to watch the Europeans trip over themselves to they're not going to do it behind the transmission lines, behind the electricity grid. Sorry, when you pop these things up, it hard for me not to address them. This is what happens when you're alive. Yeah, but
yeah, sorry. It's just correct. Trump is not interested in nation
Yes.
building. Don't care why it works, just that it works, right?
Yeah.
Jimmy?
Well, I love the fact that Trump is everything that everybody says he is, both his critics and his super fans. And like we say, he's just truly. There will only ever be one Donald Trump. So I just love how he just doesn't even pretend there's any pretense to it. Just like the big mistake that Bush made in Iraq is he didn't take the oil. I'm taking Venezuela. It's like you said that this morning. It's great.
And I'm keeping the oil.
Yeah,
and I loved it on the airplane. I believe it was Air Force One yesterday or day before. He said, "Oh yeah, Greenland's next." And I'm sitting there going, and the Danish Prime Minister. And the Danish Prime Minister goes, "Well, if you take Greenland, NATO's over."
Is there okay? Is there any happier human being on the planet than Lindsey Graham?
Oh my God! Did you? Yeah, you talking about that deal on Air Force One? Oh
why does Trump think that's accretive to his political?
It is
prospects.
It is beyond comprehension.
It's just kind of gross at some point.
It is.
He is a warmonger that I hope would retire very soon.
He might. So back to what I was saying before I got distracted by the gas pipeline grid. Europe, Europe has spent the last 4 years, demonizing Russia, and international law must be respected, and no border should ever change by force, as if any border on the planet wasn't established by force.
Yeah.
And now to watch Keir Starmer try to squirm his way out of saying that what Trump did is against international law. It's blatantly against international law, Starmer. It's not hard to say. You could also say there's nothing we could do about it because we're a vassal of the United States. It's not that complicated. Like, Trump is going to do it. So what that means is, again, as we said at the beginning of this presentation that I'll publish tomorrow, hopefully, is, look, we're not going to comment on the moralities or legalities because they don't matter. If they mattered, we'd comment on them. They just don't matter in this instance. That's very clear.
It's mind over matter, sir. I don't mind because you don't matter.
Look, our objective is to understand and to predict, not to moralize. Do I think that snatching the president of a sovereign nation in the way that has been done is a wonderful precedent to set? No. If you're in Moscow and you're thinking, all they got to do is charge Zelensky with a terrorism crime. And
didn't they try to do that a year and a half ago and it failed miserably?
I think the Russians could take out Zelensky if they wanted to.
Okay.
That'd be my guess.
I think that's probably right. Yeah.
And, Chinese social media blew up with what a wonderful precedent this is for the taking of Taiwan. Again, Trump's like, I'm just going to take Greenland. Like, as we say in the presentation, like, that's a NATO country. Like, as the Prime Minister of Denmark, God bless her, Mette Frederiksen said, well, this would be the end of NATO. Like, yeah, no SHIT, of course. Yeah, Trump doesn't think NATO matters.
But he's not going to take Greenland. He's going to do a business deal with Greenland.
No, he's going to take Greenland. Of course.
No,
David, the military.
I'll give you odds.
Again, I don't want to give away the whole presentation, but we said that the military could waltz in there and the whole operation be over by noon.
Yeah. It'd be over in 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to do it. 100% he's going to do it. Like, it's Stephen Miller's
But he didn't need to do it. Why would he do it? He doesn't need to.
It's a trophy, David. He wants the trophy. Yeah. The U.S. borders will be measurably larger by the time the next 3 years are over. I'll buy you a beer if I'm wrong.
Let me ask this.
Okay, deal.
I would love that. And in fact, I can't wait to give both of you a hug. And now let's also visit with Alberta, because I don't want the rest of Canada. But if we take Greenland, Mexico has got real problems. And God bless the poor president of Mexico. She is beholden to the cartels there. And if we had, so ignore them, and when President Trump offered to take the cartels out, she goes, "Oh no, please don't do that." So, but now we have Canada. I would like not to bring in a bunch of left-wing nut jobs into our voting bloc, but rather Alberta is more like Texas, and I would adopt Alberta in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
No,
you want to
Saskatchewan is
yeah, you
more
want to
like
throw
Wyoming, right?
you want to throw Saskatchewan in there, and in fact,
Yeah.
we just wrote a piece on that called "Tempting Target," and Saskatchewan has, you know, it has potash, it has uranium, it has oil, it has food, it has helium, which we didn't even mention in that piece, much to my regret, because I just forgot. But the combination of Alberta and Saskatchewan would be very formidable. And that whole, Lost in Space, that was a good one. We published that one this morning. There it is. Yeah, Tempting Target.
No, it's right down here, but I do want to quote you on this as I'm sharing my screen. I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin, former roommate, dark helmet, Spaceballs. Sir, that was out of the park.
The best part of that
Huge.
quote is what he says afterwards. He's like, what the heck does that mean? And he says, nothing, which is what you're about to become.
I absolutely love everything you write. And this is the article for our podcast listeners, rated number 3 in the world globally for Energy Newsbeat podcasts. I just thought I'd share that again. Greenland, Venezuela, Alberta, maybe, but don't sleep on Saskatchewan.
We have some fun. We have great Canadian subscribers. We went on this podcast at the end of the year, Money Talks with Mike Campbell. Mike's great. And the wave of new subscribers from Canada that we get, we joke internally, it's because we're writing about Canada sometimes. Like, oh my God, somebody based in the US is writing about Canada. Let's go subscribe to them. Fascinating little insight into the cultural comparisons that are ever present in Canada vis-a-vis the US. So, but yeah, there's just an enormous resource base there. Potash, 90% of US potash is imported, and 85% of that is from Saskatchewan. The bread, but wheat basket of the world, just huge resource. And by the way, size of Texas, 1.25 million people.
Yeah.
Just incredible. And they should be as rich as Saudi Arabia. And yet the Eastern elite in Canada has been exploiting the Western resources for more than a century. And they're pretty fed up with it. I think there's a potential that Trump might make a deal. I don't think they will become part of the U.S. Greenland will become part of the U.S., but during Trump's term, of that, I'm very certain. I think it's long past time that people pretend to not take Trump literally.
If I understood, Alberta has the ability to secede from Canada, and they would almost have to wait like a couple years to become a state. It would be a problem for them, but they could secede, and they really are. There is a seceding movement in Alberta to get away from the leadership.
So you speak as though these written down rules matter in the era of Trump, and they just don't. I think Venezuela has proven that. No, Alberta can become part of the U.S. next week. I mean, Ottawa says you have to wait. Okay. Who's Ottawa? Who's this Ottawa guy? He's terrible. Very ugly. Overweight, this Ottawa guy. I could hear Trump at the press conference.
This is a great question from MD Bone. Can you comment on how the drug cartels were getting into the oil business? This is a bigger question, MD Bone, as also the Bank of London has also gotten into drug money and everything else. So this is a big question.
Yeah, we wrote, I do better than comment. We wrote a piece on October 7th called Tapped Out, Drug Cartels, Oil, and the Future of Mexico. Pretty amazing just how infiltrated they are, literally tapping pipelines and, taking a VIG. And it's pretty remarkable. Like you talked about Sheinbaum earlier, she doesn't control Mexico. In the same way that the president of Colombia, this Gustavo, what's his name?
What's his last name? I never can
Petrov or something. Yeah, there you go. There's always a Doomberg piece, 440 into it here, 440 articles into it. So, Colombia is not, a sovereign country. The cartels have physical control over vast swaths of that country. Same thing in Mexico. You go to Monterrey, you're not worried about interacting with the government of Mexico. You interact with the local strong men with guns. Yeah. So yeah, you could see Mexico, another country with oil production that is nowhere near what it could be. But Pemex is another walking disaster just because of all the money they're losing, and the take by the government is larger than it should be, and that hurts in maintenance and in reinvestment. And with all the theft, like who wants to go to Mexico and have to deal with cartels? As an expat executive, for example, it's just
no. You're not hearing many, Doomberg. You're not hearing many people going, "Let's annex Mexico." No.
Yeah, if I was Scheinbaum, I'd get busy inking that trade deal, though. I think she's been kind of slow rolling it, waiting for the Supreme Court to make it all illegal. I after this past weekend, if she were smart, she'd probably, figure out a win-win with the Donald.
She should reconsider that strategy.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I do want to say is my Canadian group up there, I got so tickled looking at the post saying, "Please come take our leader." And then the UK started saying, "Please, President Trump, come get Herr Starmer now." So all of a sudden, President Trump is now a hero to everybody, and everybody's offering their leaders for President Trump to abduct.
Yeah, I mean, the European elite have really driven their countries into the ground to the extent they even consider themselves to be leaders of countries. I don't think Keir Starmer really cares about the average British citizen. So, again, watching him squirm, he's a lawyer too. And I love Frederick Mertz. We're waiting on legal clarification from the U.S. I mean, just listen to Trump's press conference. There will be no legal clarification forthcoming. Frederick Mertz. It's just, and then Kaya Kallas, we must respect international law. Like, says who? You and what army? I mean, this is not in support of what Trump is doing. It's just an agnostic observation. And if we are truly in the might is right era, then there are countries that have significantly more regional might than the U.S. spread all over the world. And who's to stop them from, all right, the UN Security Council doesn't matter anymore. Let's just go ahead and take what we want. And that's going to happen. I think the odds of a blockade of Taiwan skyrocketed on Saturday. I think odds of a significant escalation in Ukraine skyrocketed on Saturday. The UN Security Council is meaningless. Just is. You heard Marco Rubio yesterday. Somebody asked him, the UN is saying, "I don't care what the UN says." Cut the reporter off. I was like, yeah, clearly. Great.
I would have no problem defunding the UN and moving them out of the United States. They do not need to be here. Diplomatic immunity needs to go away.
Sure. I mean, I think the UN lost its utility long ago, and it's now as corrupt as anything else. And it's a giant make-work program for people who don't like America. Let's just call it what it is.
This is an interesting from Robert Shepstone. We saw Rubio pushing the movement towards taking Venezuela. Any idea who would encourage Trump to annex Greenland?
He's been saying that
encouragement. I don't think he needs encouragement, does he?
2017, right? I mean, this is an old idea.
Yeah. In fact, Christopher Messina, who wrote the Messina federal budget, David and I both have enjoyed interacting with Christopher Messina, was there and originally talking to President Trump about that early on. And so the whole thing about Greenland is very important when you look at the arch and the reach for the Russian missiles coming over, and hitting the United States. It's critical to have our anti-defense shields there in Greenland. It is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, but like Trump is not in this to be a caretaker to Vance in 2028. Like he's thinking about the history books, the Alaska purchase, the Louisiana purchase, the Greenland purchase, quote unquote. He wants to expand the U.S. He wants to get into the Arctic. And there's a lot of soundness to his strategy. Look, I read that, new national security strategy document. Hard to disagree with much of it. And the thing about Trump that I find so amazing is his tactics and his crassness are so off-putting to his opponents that it blinds them to what he's actually doing.
Yeah, it just throws them into this blind rage and they can't think.
Right. And
Wow.
this is why we like to say that he is everything his critics and his supporters say that he is, unique in that regard. So look, he is the guy who hired Chris Wright, who wants to assert American energy dominance, who wants to catalyze a nuclear renaissance. And he's also the guy who launched Trump Coin 3 days before his inauguration.
Yeah.
He's also the guy who did Trump University. And he's, you know, awful lot of shady deals going on with various associates during this administration. Look, if the Democrats take back power in 2028, I'd put the over-under at 2/3 of the current cabinet members will end up in jail. I mean, there's going to be retribution if you know, if this gets to 2028 and then Gavin Newsom.
What are the odds, do you think, that we are going to actually kill the filibuster and save our country so that we can put same day ballot and elections in?
0. And let me tell you why. No, like, this is an important point. We've teased this out. We've teased this out a few times. Again, people get emotional when you talk about Trump and politics. We try really hard to be cold and analytical. So we have a mental model that we're shaping internally, which goes as following. Hypothetically, if there was a secret ballot today in Congress, 80% would vote to impeach or remove Trump. There is no such thing as a Republican in DC. There's the Uniparty, there's MAGA on the right and Bernie on the left. And the middle is the same party. Look, there is no distinction between Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer. I hate to break it to you.
No,
it's all phony. So, for example, a headline just came in, posted into Tony Greer's TG Macro's Slack that I'm a member of. Trump to House Republicans. If we don't win midterms, I will get impeached. 3/4 of those people hearing that would cheer his impeachment. There's no such thing as Team Republican and Team Democrat in Washington. There's Team Deep State and this outsider that everyone's running the clock out on. This is, and by the way, as a mental model that works really well at explaining events. Why won't the Republicans just nuke the filibuster? Surely the Democrats will when they get power. Yes, they know that. They don't care. They don't want to. They don't want to impose Trump's agenda. They were getting rich, fat, and happy in the old system. Trump is a disruptor to that. Look, there's a Republican Party at the state level and at local levels, but not in DC. No, Ted Cruz isn't a Republican.
Let me ask this question, since I'm now going to go, never mind, slash my own tires. Just kidding. But when you just to have some fun, but when you sit back and take a look, California, Governor Newsom has eviscerated the oil and gas industry, and his war on oil has been so good that you have the 20% of the refineries, you have the main pipeline shutting down, and that has gone and extended all the way up into Washington. And the 4 refineries up in Washington fulfill Oregon and their gasoline and diesel. One of those refineries is now shutting down. We have a national crisis going to happen in the next few months in California.
Well, you just stated Gavin Newsom's platform for the 2028 election. Look how terrible I am.
That he created a problem, and he wants to do it to the rest of the United States.
Correct. And it'll resonate with his base.
Oh, totally.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at how terrible I am. Promote me. It's the Peter principle. It's only slightly sarcastic.
Well, I mean, we just went through 4 years of Joe Biden, the lowest common denominator there ever was in the presidential office.
I call him Joe Cadaver.
Yeah,
So I mean, 3 of us, right? Nobody's listening.
Are they going to go lower? Yeah, of course they're going to go lower. They're going to go lower in every election cycle. AOC will be after Gavin Newsom.
Well, I mean, just listen to Kamala Harris talk.
I can't.
It's, or Pete. Pete's going to run.
Mayor Pete. Oh my goodness.
But again, the quote unquote Republicans are no better. I mean,
no,
the people that wear that logo, we wouldn't call them ideologues. Very few ideologues in Washington. I guess like Mike Lee might be one exception.
It's hard to get rich being an ideologue.
Correct.
Really, really hard.
Correct. Hard to be rich being a communist too, but certainly being an ideologue is hard.
Well,
Yeah,
Bernie got rich, but he's a compromised communist.
Sure. I love the rugged individualism, or the warmth of collectivism. That's got to be the quote of the year already, right? I mean,
Oh, the Mondami being elected is absolutely a
it's got to
hoot.
be. It's got to be a psyop, right? I mean,
It-
came out of nowhere. You know, the warmth of collectivism. I mean, this got to be like you wake up, it's a joke, right?
And
This-
Tony Seguro on X owns, I believe his company owns the rights to phones. He has met with Obama 4 or 5 times in the last few months. He was really introduced by Obama. So when you sit back and think Mondami is not it's a precursor to what the United States is being done by still Obama.
Yeah, I don't know. Obama's kind of like the boogeyman for everybody to blame for all the problems on the
I'm just
way.
saying he's met with him 4 times in the last few
Sure. I
months.
mean, he's probably a kingmaker in the Democratic Party. Sure, I get that. You know, every time he visits London, Twitter lights up. Oh my God, you know, it's the British against Trump, and there's probably some truth to that, I suppose. But
I would agree with that.
yeah, I just think you know, Obama's got his own issues. You know, there's a rather unfortunate death that seemed to happen near his home about 18 months ago, and you know,
Yep.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's
we don't write a political rag sheet. You know, we focus on energy.
David does. I don't.
I do.
But when we sit back and take a look at where do we see your next article besides coming around the corner, how do you create your next article? Because you're always spot on, and you've got your finger and your pulse there.
Yeah, not always spot on. We try to make a few long shot guesses, and sometimes those don't pan out. We research, write, publish, promote, and defend a piece every 4 days. That includes podcast appearances, comments, emails. And look, sometimes we get stuff wrong in the pieces, and people are quick to point it out, and oops, you know, it happens. You know, we like to say mistakes should be rare, admitted to, corrected, and learned from. How do pieces come together? It's kind of what I was personally meant to do, which is to synthesize headlines into an article. And I used to do this in the corporate world. I gained a reputation for writing technology to check writers in a language they can understand. And I used to do that privately in the corporate setting, and now we just do it, you know, publicly. But I'll get up in the morning and I'll read the Financial Times and Bloomberg and the New York Times and the Washington Post and the LA Times, and read some Russian propaganda, some Ukrainian propaganda, some Chinese propaganda, see what's going on in the world, and something will hit. Every Doomberg piece has a 1-sentence summary. Once I get that sentence, then, okay, what are the 15 things I want to say? And off we go. It's just kind of cool. You know, once you do something, it's about reps. You know, that whole 10,000 hour thing is true. We've done 440 of these and maybe 50 Doom Zooms in the past 5 years. And we don't take vacations. You know, 431 was lost in space. I'm counting the 10 I wrote that the editor bounced. It was not a bad hit rate, you know, 2% get flushed at the editor stage. Yeah, we can't write that. What are you doing? Some of them I wish we'd published anyway. I wrote one about Michael Saylor and strategy that has aged quite well, but we decided to spike it. So yeah, it just comes, and then once you see it, once I have a piece in my head, I could write it in an hour. And then it goes through very vigorous editing and fact checking and all the things that you would, as we've grown in revenue, we've tried to grow in our professionalism because people are paying you and you want to get things right. You know, nothing worse than an error of fact in a piece. A typo I can live with, but an error of fact is drives me crazy. Luckily, we haven't had a meaningful one in about 50 articles, I think. But fact checking is its own science. It's pretty interesting.
It is.
You'd be surprised what you just throw away in a piece that you think is obviously true, and it turns out it's not.
It's tougher. It's getting tougher.
Yeah, especially with, we supplement our research with AI. Powerful tool, way better than Google. And I prefer Perplexity because it gives the references, and so like you can go and do your own sanity check a priori, and so, but it's a very powerful tool, good for spotting typos and things like that too. So
Nice.
yeah, it's fun.
We've got two questions. And this one is any comments on the canal zone and whether a regional security argument would suffice in taking it back? The Panama Canal is what I'm assuming the question is about, and the two ports are still owned by the
Chinese, yeah.
Chinese. So
pull that back up. I want to. There is no argument needed. If Trump wants it, he's going to go get it. I mean, I think that's what I think that's the message of the weekend, right? I mean,
right.
I mean,
after this weekend, I would have laughed before, but now it's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, talk about this back to the whole Greenland thing. Like, I quit drinking, David, so you have to buy me a Diet Coke, but I will be collecting on that bet.
I'll buy you a steak. This one is from SD-UT3G. Texas oil refineries are designed to process Venezuelan crude, which segments of the neoconservative faction are shaping President Trump's policy, especially with regard to the Texas oil industry. I'm doing a Scooby moment. What is that? What's the question?
I think I know what the question is.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, many of the refineries along the U.S. Gulf Coast were built with Venezuelan heavy crude in mind. What does that mean? It means they have invested the money and manpower and technological expertise to handle sulfur and other contaminants and similar grades of crude from Canada, West Texas Select. But that doesn't mean that they have to process that crude. They just like to because they get it at a discount. The Venezuelan Meyer 16 crude, which is heavy crude from the Orinoco Belt, that has been blended with light to get up to API 16. I think it comes out of the ground like API 4 or 7 or 8, something like that. That trades for $10 to $20 below Brent, which is why the Chinese like it. And that's why the Gulf Coast refiners like it, because yes, it's a crappy oil, but it's cheap enough that, and we know we're in the crap handling business, so we can earn our cost of capital on that discount.
Yeah, here's one other question here. Do you think the Argentina bailout functioned as part of the systematic payoff or influence network to funnel Venezuela's security and military forces assisting in the Maduro capture? I don't have any idea how to answer that one.
I don't think Argentina is a pass-through of U.S. dollar country. It's a we need U.S. dollars country. And so, but we did predict that bailout largely in a piece that we wrote called Mosaic Theory a couple of weeks before it happened. I believe what we said in that piece was that Trump and Bessent would have to fight a rearguard action on Malay, if you pull it up.
I'll pull that up here in just a second. And when you take a look, here's Valero, one of the ones in the Gulf Coast. Their stock price is one of the ones that I'm looking at. Here is ExxonMobil. It's also doing quite well today. For our podcast listeners, I'm using my VectorVest charting software that I use. And here's Baker Hughes. It's also doing quite well. And here is Chevron doing quite well as well.
Yeah. We put a note out on Substack Notes, bullish Chevron on Saturday.
Yes, absolutely.
Knee jerk, wish I'd known this on Friday.
Yes, I enjoy the financial charting systems from VectorVest, and the folks there are just top-notch folks. But let's get over to let me get back to Doomberg here.
Yeah, no worries. Always happy to sing for my supper. Looks like a great charting program.
They are great. My dad has been a day trader for about 20 years, and I'm picking up a lot of his stuff. So he is really, really good on it. Which one was the article you were talking about?
You go up to the search bar. We'll teach people how to go all the way up to the top here. There's a little search button there. There you go.
Yep.
and then type in Mosaic. S. Yeah. Oh boy, Stu, you're really exposing yourself here.
Mosaic. Well, I went to Oklahoma State, but
Yeah,
I
that
did get my
explains
MBA. Yeah, I
Uh,
did cover it up with an MBA.
From
All right.
where? That's the key test.
From Oklahoma City University, and
There you
it was the first year they had the Juris Doctorate teachers were in there, and it was pretty fun. We had a lot of fun in there. So I have
you
not
go.
read that one.
Scroll down
So-
until you see a picture of Malay. You know, we just went through Latin, you know, the southern part of the Western Hemisphere, and sort of predicted what Trump was likely to do.
Isn't Scott cool? He is a cool guy. I think he is a hoot.
There you go. Yeah. Scroll up. There you go. Yeah. Trump could help his beleaguered friend by, yeah. So the Trump administration may feel compelled to mount a rearguard action in Argentina. This was just before the bailout because of the election results and how the bonds and the currency both plunged. That was about a week or two before the bailout. One of our wins on the year. So yeah, one of the things that's interesting is that energy is a really great input into geopolitical analysis, and I can't wait till Polymarket is legal for me, because I think I'm going to jump on there and start to trade.
So are we going to see, and this is going to be something that's absolutely a hoot, are we going to see Doomberg and Nancy Pelosi as the best traders out there?
You know, if I were a good trader, you said your father day traded, has been day trading for 20 years. Trading's hard. I'm going to Tony Greer's conference in February, and it's a trading conference. I don't trade much. I invest personally, you know, in the private markets, and I save by buying gold and land. And I'm a bad trader. I have two problems with my trading. One is I'm a hunch and buncher. You know, I get an idea and I put too much in, and then I stare at losses for too long. That's a very bad combination, by the way, to be a hunch and buncher and inability to sell losers quickly. But there are two aspects to trading. One is developing an edge, and then two is bankroll management. And I just told you I'm bad at bankroll management, but physics is a great edge for trading. And if you're good at bankroll management, then that presentation would be interesting to you, because I'm going to teach them how to use physics as a directional edge. It doesn't take much of an edge if you're good at bankroll management to do trading correctly. Blackjack famously is like 1.5%, 2% for the house, and they just kill it. So physics as an edge, especially for geopolitics, I think could be pretty powerful.
And you just let me know, though, that you may have the gut reaction to be a day trader by being a Polymarket wannabe.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I've had some success trading. I've just decided that it's, and also we don't like to have positions in the things we write about. There are two schools of thought in that regard. One is you need to have skin in the game. But there's an alternative view, which is if you don't have a financial interest, then you could be as unbiased as possible, and your audience is getting your unvarnished, untainted view. There are arguments to be made for both. We've chosen the latter.
Right. Yeah, I like the way you think. Well, we got about 5 more minutes here, David. What do you got for your last questions here?
Well, I would like Doomberg's view. You know, one of the prevailing questions right now related to Venezuela, and you've kind of touched around this issue, but is what is the appetite going to be? I mean, the obvious U.S. companies that Trump is referring to, who previously had stakehold or still do in Venezuela, or Chevron, which is still there and has been there the whole time, ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips, both of whom had previous pretty large positions there, to become involved in the revitalization of the oil sector there.
I think
some analysts don't think there's going to be much of an appetite from those companies. My personal belief is they wouldn't have put the president out there to say those things on Saturday if they hadn't had pre-discussions with those companies.
Correct.
But I could be wrong, and I wonder what.
No, I'm wholeheartedly in your camp. And look, when the president of the United States calls and you're the CEO of ExxonMobil, you pick up the phone, and don't think for a second that the goodies on offer are limited to just Venezuela.
Right.
Trump wants a political win in Venezuela. You go in and spend a few billion there, and we'll help you out over here. Nice little lease in Alaska or somewhere on federal lands, or maybe we'll buy some oil from you termed out to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve at a good price. Who knows? I mean,
Right.
I'm just making things up. To give you an example, like Chris
There's
Wright's
just
going.
a wide array of possibilities there.
Right. There's a lot of puts and takes. And oh, by the way, I did this for you in 2018. I need your help. You bet, Mr. President. These types of deals happen all the time. And Trump is a businessman, and he understands how the game is played. He might abuse the rules of the game from time to time, but he certainly understands how it's played. And I think, the old joke, which I heard from Porter Stansberry, but is an old man dies and goes to heaven, and he's at the gates, and Peter says, "Sorry, there's just too many oil men here. We're all full up on oil men." And the oil man cups his mouth and screams at the top of his lungs, "Oil found in hell." And then you see wave after wave of oil men diving out of heaven, going to hell, because they just can't help themselves but drill where there's oil. And the guy gets to walk his way in through the pearly gates there. And so that joke, which is the kind of joke that sticks with you, oil found in Venezuela, you're going to be hard pressed to resist the temptation to go exploit the largest hydrocarbon accumulation in the world.
Yeah, that's my view. Anyway, we'll see how it works out.
You bet. Well, Doomberg, again, you are one of the reasons that I did make it to number 3 on FeedSpot. So thank you very much. I do appreciate you. And I can't wait to have you back again. And we are championing you out here. Doomberg says this or Doomberg does that. My wife is tired of me talking about the green chicken. So I do appreciate you.
Yeah, listen, great. Doomberg.com and classicsreadaloud.com as well. Classicsreadaloud.substack.com, which is our sister publication, newly launched. Fun project that we've been working on as a team as well. So thanks to you guys.
How's it going for you?
It's going great. Yeah, no, we had a good launch. We just launched in September. We're already sniffing 4,000 subscribers, which is pretty good.
Nice.
For a standing start. And the product is excellent and a lot of crossover. We like to imagine that the overlap in the Venn diagram of a Doomberg reader and a Classics Read Aloud listener is probably a pretty valuable person. And so, it's a fun project. It's great to start a new project from scratch and to put everything that we've learned into marketing it. It's one of the Doomberg co-founders and its editor-in-chief. That's her passion project, and the rest of us are helping her with it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Here's one last question. U.S. manufacturing is relocating to Texas and further south. What policy changes would Mexico ultimately need to implement to take advantage of lower energy costs for domestic industrial growth? Get rid of the cartels.
Get rid of the cartels. It is doing a good job. I mean, on the energy side, a lot of cheap Permian natural gas is finding its way to Mexico, which is reindustrializing that part of the country.
Yep.
So there's huge opportunity there if you could just clean up the cartels. Look, Trump is right about the cartels. He's over target. And look, if you clean that up, I mean, we've said this before, and we wrote this, last thing I'll say is we wrote this piece in December 2023 called The New World's Oil. And if we just start from Texas and go south to the tip of Argentina, there's 10 million barrels a day of incremental oil to be had.
Oh, yeah.
Easily. And so Mexico, Venezuela, Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Brazil, there's just an enormous amount of it. So
when you take a look at the Don Roe doctrine, I love that President Trump was actually laughing instead of calling it the Monroe Doctrine. He laughed about it, calling it the Don Roe Doctrine. Let me get rid of the banners across the top here as we get this here. Where's the banners? There we go. The oil empire of Americas, it really does change. I see OPEC really taking note that as Venezuela as an OPEC plus member, this is kind of interesting.
Venezuela's a founding member of OPEC.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Yeah. And look, we've plotted this before. The Western Hemisphere already outproduces the Middle East in oil and vastly outproduces the Middle East in natural gas, of course.
Big time.
We did a whole Doom Zoom presentation called All You Can Eat. the oil and gas potential of the Western Hemisphere. I mean, we just start in the Arctic and work our way down. It's incredible. What are we doing in the Middle East? What are we doing? What do we care who rules the Donbass? What do we ultimately care about Taiwan? I mean, there's lots to do here. Trump is correct in that way. By the way, last thing we'll say, I hope this doesn't shut off after an hour,
No,
is I hope you paid up for the premium membership here, Stu.
I do. I paid through the nose. Thank you.
Forget about Greenland. Cuba's next. Go find a
Yeah.
poly market contract and bet it. Cuba's next for sure.
Yeah.
Colombia.
But Trump's not going to invade Cuba either.
No, they're just
Doesn't
going to
need
choke
to.
it off of oil, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I saw
Don't need
Scheinbaum was sending oil to Cuba today. Seems like another tactical miscalculation on her part.
Yep.
But we'll see.
She's full of those.
She certainly is. The Don is going to reopen the casinos in Cuba. This is the Godfather. He's going to undo the sins of the Godfather here. So, and if anybody knows how to build a casino, it's Donald Trump.
You bet. You bet.
Oh, Doomberg, you just cracked me up. Thank you so much for everything that you do, Doomberg, being an industry leader, and I appreciate you and all the things that you do for your Substack. We'll have this out on our Substacks and our podcast. This is available on YouTube, X, and everywhere else. And again, you're a very huge reason for our being named number 3 there globally out of all the energy podcasts, which I think is a pretty big deal.
Good for you. Yeah, happy to help and appreciate the kind words, guys. It was fun. Live podcasts are always the best.
All right, we'll see you soon, and thanks. Talk to you soon.